Hi guys, so this is going to be the Photoshop tutorial for dodging and burning, which is your assignment for this week. Um, I apologize for the video quality here. I think this is going to be a little bit rough, but we'll see. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to go to File, and I'm going to open up a picture. And so this photograph, which is probably going to be a little bit pixelated, but that's okay. It's a photograph I took of the snow on the when the pond in the backyard froze over, and some tire tracks in the snow. And this is a good example of a time when you should overexpose your shot. Do you remember when we talked about exposure compensation a couple of weeks back, and we talked about when you're taking a picture of a mostly white scene, you want to increase your exposure a little bit so that the white areas look white. So in this picture you can see that, and since I didn't do that, I just left it on auto exposure, the snow is pretty gray here. So we're going to use dodging and burning to fix that a little bit. So what you're going to do is you're going to go over here to the tool bar over here, and you're going to go down to this one right here, which is your dodge and burn tool. And if you right, I think by default it's set to dodge. If you right click on it, you can see where it says dodge, and then also you can go to burn. So for right now we're going to stay with dodge. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go up here to the size. I'm making my size pretty big. I think by default it's set to around 20. In general, when you do dodging and burning on a photograph, you do it it's when you want to change the exposure on a fairly small section of the picture. I'm doing it on the whole picture here just to make it easier to see. But in general, you don't really want to do too much of it that way. There are easier ways to change the exposure for the entire picture. But anyway, so here we are. I made my dodge tool pretty big here. Then up here where you see range, you can do shadows, midtones, and highlights, and it gives the exposure. I think by default it'll be set to 50 for you. So let's just see what that looks like at the default. So I'm going to go to shadow, and I'm just going to kind of drag it across here like this. And you don't see too much of a change here with shadows. We'll go down to midtones, and you should see it'll get a little bit lighter here. And then if we go to highlights, should be even lighter here. Now what you can kind of see happening is that when we have it set to highlights, the darker areas aren't affected as much, but the lighter areas get affected more. When you're in shadows, the darker areas get affected more and the lighter areas get affected less. And then in the midtones are the ones that are affected more. So let me undo all of this stuff here. Whoops, step backward, step backward, step backward. Okay, so I'm going to keep it on highlights because I mainly want to lighten up my snow. So what I'm going to do though is the way that the default value is set to 50% here, when I do that on here, it's a little bit too light. If you looked at the GIMP video, you would see that the exposure there by default was set to 50%, and there it worked out fine. But for here, that's just a little bit too light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to set this thing, honestly, I'm just going to drop it down to around 10% or so and see how that looks. Okay, so if we do that, now that's looking pretty good. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to cover the entire picture with the dodge tool here. So I'm just going back all the way up here, and as you can see, I'm lightening up mainly the highlights, the lightest areas on this. So I'm just going to bring this back all the way into the back here, back by where the trees are. I'm going to leave the trees dark though because I like them being nice and dark back there. Alright, so now already you can see this thing is looking a little bit better here. Our snow is looking white. When you guys do your assignment, you're going to be dodging one photo and then taking a second photo and burning in a part of that one. But I'm just going to show you how to do both on one photo. So I'm going to go back over to this now, and I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to click burn. And right now my tool is a little bit small, so I'm going to bring this back up fairly big here again. Okay, and then now again we're at midtones 50%. So let's just see what burning looks like set to the default value. So if I kind of go across here, you can see how it makes the midtone's darker, but everywhere I just dodged where it got lighter stays pretty much the same. If I go to shadows, the darker areas will be even darker. The only real dark areas are in this area in here, but they'll get even darker. And then again, if you go over the top of it again, you'll make it even darker. Every time I go over it, I make it darker and darker. Let me undo all of that I just did. And then let's look and see what highlights look like. Now if we do that, you'll see that the lighter areas that I did are all getting darker in here. And then the midtone values are kind of staying the same. So that's what each of those things look like when you do them set to the default values. So I'm going to go back on all of those. And then for this one, when I do the burning on here, and it may be different for you, but for me, I'm going to keep it set to shadows, and I'm just going to burn in this tire track going back like this. So let's see, what does that look like? That's actually not too bad. So I'm just kind of moving my tool right around there, being fairly loose with it, and just kind of bringing it all the way back like that, okay? So already, this is not perfect, but it's a lot better than what it was before. If we go back to revert, you can see what it looked like before. Much grayer and less pleasant, right? So if I go back, that's a much nicer photograph. I might be a little bit too blown out in my highlights here, but all in all, it's a better picture here. So again, we'll just go up to 5, we'll go to Save As, and then you will upload that JPEG to your Moodle site. All right, thanks.